Good evening, everyone. There's some more people still coming in from the wait room, but we will get started because as I just spoke to Luanne, there's a lot to cover tonight. So as there always is when we go do the CSS profile walkthrough, um, it tends to be, and I guess the only word I can say is the most popular event, not because people like it, it's because they need it. So we get a lot of people who register, a lot of people who watch the recording after. So hopefully you will find this helpful as all the people in the past have. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And I am here tonight with Luanne Lee, who is the founder of Your College Planning Coach and is a college financial planner. Luanne and I have worked together, I don't know how many years now, Luanne, 5, 6 years.
At least,
Yeah.
probably more.
This person? Okay. Doing lots of stuff, but on a traditional basis, we annually host, and Luann does the CSS profile, this walkthrough. In other years, we've done, in addition, a FAFSA walkthrough. We talk about loans at another time of the year. We talk about financial aid appeals at another time of the year. So, there's lots of topics that Luann and I cover. And just before we officially get started and I pass it off to Luann, let me just do my standard housekeeping comments. This is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar. And I say that because if you would like, it's always nice to see people on video so that we can see your faces. It's nice to get to know people a little bit in this, remote world that we live in now with the internet. And this is recorded, and so we will send the recording out tomorrow. Please feel free to put questions in chat. I will look at them, maybe interrupt Luann a little bit, depending on what the question is, and we will scroll through questions at the end as well. And my only other last comment is because it is a Zoom meeting, if you can keep yourself muted, unless you truly have a question, it's always fun to hear people's voices as well as see them. If you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, that's fine as well. So let's get started, Luann, since there's a lot to cover.
Okay, well, thanks, Debbie, and welcome everyone. And as Debbie said, we've been doing this for a number of years, and it is always a great topic because there is so much to this. And I do CSS profile reviews, and for the last 5 years, I've only had one parent that didn't have to change anything on their application as we went through the review. So what I've done, do not have every single slide or every single screen of the CSS because we'd be here for all day. But I've got the ones where I've seen the most mistakes. And most of the time, it's just because you're in a rush, you're hurrying, you don't think can't be that big of a deal. And it kind of is. So the biggest tip that I can give all of you is just be prepared, take your time, and don't rush, and read the directions. And sometimes you have to read them 2 or 3 times. And even I still have to do that because they change things up. I found a few new questions this year. So we're going to start up at the top of the slide is the URL to go straight to the cssprofile.collegeboard.org. And as you can see, when I started to put this together on September 29th, there was a maintenance. And often this happens a lot. So my best tip for you is if you are a last minute type of person, like I typically am, don't be for this because it takes the College Board sometimes about 3 days to process this application to the colleges. And you're up against deadlines, and they want your application in their queue by their deadline date, not the date that you submitted it to College Board. So if you you can check it a couple of days ahead of time to see, okay, am I going to run into a situation where the site might be down for maintenance? Because even though they say from 7 to 8 p.m., oftentimes it might be 9 o'clock before it comes back on. So just be aware of that. And then also make sure that you're signing into the right application. The fall
Luann,
26, 27. Yes.
do you want to also just emphasize, since you just kind of brought it up a little bit about deadlines?
I'm
Because,
going to on the next slide.
perfect.
Yep. Yeah, or the one after this. But what you want to do, gather up all of your financials, anything financial. This isn't like the FAFSA where, oh, they don't take some things. Just gather it all up. What I do with my private clients, we do the FAFSA and the CSS at the same time. So we do gather up everything financial and just get it done. So it's going to all the asset figures are going to sync up and such. So, Debbie, can you mute? Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
I got it. Yeah.
So you're going to use the 2024 personal and business taxes if you own a business, but you're going to use the current asset. And when I say assets, an asset is checking, savings bonds, as well as investments, as well as 529s. A 529 is a parent investment. I don't care if it's only in your student's name for the CSS profile and for the FAFSA. It is a parent investment. You don't want to put it on under the student because it's assessed higher with student assets than it is parents. Trusts. And, you're all going to start typing into Debbie, but I have a revocable trust or an irrevocable, and I can't use it. They know that. You're going to put that information into the special circumstances area at the end. So you're gathering up all of your retirement accounts. Even what's the value of your pension, in, 10, 15 years or whatever. If you've got a prepaid tuition, find out what the current value of it is. Your mortgage statement. And if you've got a line of credit that you're not using, that's not part of your debt. So if you're using it, so if you've got $10,000 that you're paying off on a 20,000 line of credit, you can add that 10,000 to what you owe on your mortgage. But if it's just an open line, you don't add that. So
Luann, what about, somebody's asking about variable life and term life insurance policies?
no. So term life, there's no equity to it. With variable life and whole life, UILs, there's cash value. It is the only asset that is not counted on for the FAFSA or for the CSS profile. I think Harvard asks if you have a permanent life insurance, but they can't penalize you for it, especially if you say you're, using it to save for your reretirement.
Oh,
So good question.
not another question just related to
We're
assets.
going to be here till midnight.
This is a good one. Relative to trusts, what if the parent is on a trust with their parents, but the trust is, structured for when the grandparents or the parents pass away and the parents are still living?
It depends on how it depends on how it's set up. So if the grandparents or the parents are alive and it's to pass it on after they've both passed away, that's different. But let's just say that you have a trust for your child who was involved in an accident, and the trust is there to pay for their medical expenses that they'll be incurring. You have to disclose it, but you can also explain it in the special circumstances. So now when you log in, you'll see, okay, welcome, the academic year, again, double check. This College Board Financial Aid ID, there isn't going to be an ID number there when you first get started. So you're going to click on continue application. And there's going to be a section that, you're going to make sure that your kid's name is spelled correctly, the right social, date of birth, and whatnot. You're going to, there's going to be just some demographic information to go through. And then once you've got that in there, it kind of saves it. It's solid now so that you can log out. And then when you log back in, you'll see that, oh, we've got a College Board Financial Aid ID now. And so it's a 6 to 7 characters to it. And just to let you know, the red, you're not going to see red boxes on yours. This is to protect, my lovely client that let me use them as a guinea pig, so I could get the slides. But you want to write that down because you will use it later and need it later. So I want to point out, when you are adding your schools, you want to make sure that the CSS code and the school and the campus and the program are the right one for your student, because oftentimes there might be 3 or 4 different ones to choose from. Now, what Debbie was wanting me to reinforce is deadlines. Some of you have an common application deadline of November 1st. Some of those schools have a financial aid application deadline of November 1st. There
Mhm.
aren't too many that do it, but some do.
I've
So
just seen a few more, like more than in the past. They seem to be creeping up.
yep.
And even if it's not November 1st, then the next big deadline date is November 15th, which
Oh,
isn't that far
well,
after.
usually the ones that I've seen that are like a ED or EA of November 1st, their deadline is November 8th for their financial
A bit,
forms,
right, right.
as well as the transcripts and everything else.
Mhm.
So some of these schools are very, very strict with their deadlines. You got to know that ahead of time. You need to find that out right now
Like tonight,
because
after
we're
you get
on
off.
October
Yeah,
9th already.
yeah.
And for those of you in Florida, there's Florida State and University of Florida, two of the Florida schools are October 15th, as well as if you're in Georgia, Georgia Tech is October 15th as well. So there's some early schools deadlines. So they're not always going to show up on this slide or this screen on the CSS like this does for Muhlenberg. They're saying their priority filing date is December 1st. Syracuse, click for details. Their date was November 1st for early decision, early action, and get the paperwork in by November 8th. So you need to go to your schools, and a good tip. So go to the school website, go in the search bar, and just type in financial aid deadlines. And so that way it'll just take you right to the page that will, and scroll down because it's going to be a long page, but there'll be a breakdown if the school is early decision, early action, regular decision, because they'll have different dates for those different applications. Okay, make sure that every time you do a click, whose information am I putting here? Is it the students? Is it the parents? It's going to tell you up in the corner. And don't let your kids use their school email address, and don't use your work email address if you think you might, it's kind of shaky about your job. Use an email address that you have more control over. And speaking of your kids, don't let them do this by themselves. This is too important. And if parents are having a hard time, why would you ever think that a student could do this on their own? So sit down with them if they insist on being part of it, but don't feel guilty or, oh my gosh, I'm cheating because I'm doing, the financial aid forms. This is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, yes, the parents should be doing this. I do this for all my clients. But anyways, so just that's my PSA. You know? So here we have parent relationships. If there's, mom and dad, two parents, are they married? Are they divorced? Are they, unmarried and living together? Whatever, just check whatever for that household verification. But you'll see here that they're asking not only for the biological parents, whether they're married or divorced, but also step parents. If there's a legal guardian, what is other? Well, that could be like a grandparent like myself. And if my grandson, who, I love dearly, but maybe I'm not his guardian, as far as a legal guardian, but he still lives with us, then that would be an other. And of course, if a parent has passed away, they want to know. So here's a new question, Debbie. Who provided more than half of the financial support? This has never been on the CSS profile.
Never.
And so it's starting to sync up with the FAFSA. I truly think in a few more years, just like the FAFSA, I think the CSS profile schools will not be taking, overlapping students in college at the same time. That's,
Ooh.
so we'll see, but this is the first time ever that they've asked. So it's going to have both of the parents down here if you're divorced and or separated. And then the year of separation or divorce. I find it odd that people don't remember the date of that. So if you have to look up some for some documents, look for them before you start working on this. So what amount will that parent contribute towards the educational costs? And so this is a tricky one. Everybody always asks, well, if we don't put anything, are we going to get more aid? Or if we put, what we have in our 529, are they not going to give us any aid? It's not a trick question. So by this time you're filling these forms out, you should have some idea of what you're planning to pay out of pocket for college without loans. So if for all of my clients, we just look at, okay, what do you have in your college plan, whether it's a 529 or, a stock account or such, and we'll divide that by 4. Whether it's $1,000 or $100,000, it doesn't matter. We're going to divide it by 4. And some parents will say, well, but I'm also still planning on adding, another $3,000 to $5,000 a year. They can add that. They don't have to, but they can if that's what their plan was. If you put 0 because you don't have anything saved, you're, just getting by the skin of your teeth and you're going to take loans, that's okay. But I would put something, even if it's just $1,000. And over on the right, you see additional parent information. This is if there is in a divorce or a separation, there's going to be a non-custodial parent profile. And so the College Board you're going to give their email address. College Board is going to send them, a message. You need to create your own College Board account that will be linked to your student with their information. They're not going to see, neither one of you are going to see each other's information as long as your student doesn't give, their login and password to the non-custodial parent. And I've never, had that happen. But if the school, uh, um, you know, just for you to say, well, they're not going to contribute, that's not going to get you a waiver to not submit a non-custodial parent profile. So if you over here on the left, if you don't know if they're going to help financially, you can just put unknown at this time. You don't have to put a figure if you don't know. But for you to just say, they're not going to help, so I need more aid and I'd like a waiver, you're not going to get that waiver if that parent is still in the child's life and you have things to do with them on a regular basis. Oh, going back to the bottom, it asked too, is there anything in writing that states that they're going to offer this support? I'm shocked that that was there because the college really doesn't care if there's anything in writing, what your divorce decree says or whatever the case is. All they care about is that the bill gets paid at the time when it's due. So, you can't call them and say, well, my ex is late on their share. And they're just going to say, well, you either need to take out a loan or we're not going to be able to go forward. Now, when it comes time to start adding the schools, you can search by the CSS code number, the college name, or the state. Just make sure you've got the right campus, the right code number. You'll hit select down at the bottom, and then it's going to ask, tell us more about your schools. And are you going to live on campus, off campus? And now are you applying regular decision, early action, or early decision? Just because all three of these are there doesn't mean that every school offers those three applications. You need to know how is your student applying and what those deadline dates are. I can't stress that enough. And for some of you, your student has already received an ID from the college because they've already submitted their applications. So you can put that on the application. But if you don't have one yet, you don't have to worry about it. It's not that important. And then, of course, they're going to want your date of birth, social, your email address and such. And it's all just to make sure that everything is going to sync up and not have any delays. Your tax status. Okay, have you completed your taxes? Please get them done. If you check on estimated and are going to file, they're going to want, you're really not going to get any answers until you've submitted that final tax return. Now, some people don't have to file a tax return. They're either, maybe they're on disability or such and don't earn enough. So if that's the case, that's okay, because you're in the IRS system that you don't file a tax return. Um, you know, US tax return, Canadian. Now, I've had clients where a parent lived and worked and earned in another country. So they have that tax return from their country, and then we have to convert that currency over to US dollars, which is a bit of a pain. And if you don't know what your tax filing is, and I'm saying that with a smile, I'm not a tax person. Just look on your tax return. It'll say whether you are head of household or single or whatever the case is. But just be aware, you want to have your whole tax return, not just the 2 pages. You want the schedules as well, because they're going to be asking you, And this is what I like about the CSS. They tell you exactly what line to get the information from. Line 11, your adjusted gross income, your AGI. If you don't have a figure in line 11 because you're self-employed and how you do your taxes through a partnership or LLC or whatever, and you don't have a line in the AG line in amount in the line 11, you put a 0. It's that simple, but people freak out because, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I don't have a number there. That's because it's somewhere else in your tax return. Same thing, Schedule 1. Schedule 3 throws everybody. They think, oh my gosh, where's my Schedule 3? I can't find it. If you're like most people, you either file your taxes, TurboTax or H&R Block, or you have a CPA, somebody do the taxes for you. They electronically send it to you. You have a nice, neat packet. It goes in order. So if you don't have a Schedule 3, it's just because it wasn't there. You didn't have anything to put on there. But you might have a Schedule 3, and so just check the box. It really is kind of this simple, but you're so emotionally stressed that you sometimes don't think logically. And all these, it's gonna so on your 1040 on the tax return, lines 1 through 3, starting at 1Z. It's that, just look at each line. And if there isn't anything on that line, just put a 0. Even so, I saw somebody say, well, if it's not required, uh, do we leave everything else blank? No. They're asking you this information for a reason. So even if it's got a answer there, but it's not required, you've got to answer it. But put a 0 so that all right, I checked it and there wasn't anything there. Now, if there are required sections and you try to hit continue to go to the next slide or screen, it's not going to let you go. And all of a sudden, this field is required, enter a response to continue. And again, here we go, line by line. If you've had a rollover, make sure that it's indicated here, especially if you rolled it over and you didn't take a distribution. But you might have something on line 4 for a taxable amount from a distribution, and you forgot because it was a year and a half ago. Oh, that's right. We had to take a distribution from our, 401k or IRA because we had to put a new roof on the house or such. So, you took money out and you pay taxes on it. So just answer each question as it's asked. Some of you that are receiving Social Security benefits are shocked to find out that, hey, we're getting taxed on some of this. That's what that line is for. Capital gain or loss. If you have a negative on that line, it's okay. Just put negative and the number. Line 22. They don't want the taxes from line 24. They want line 22. 24 has, your self-employment tax and whatnot. They're going to get that somewhere else. And the same thing, how much did you earn from work in 2024? So you're going to include wages, salaries, tips, commissions, include income reported on W-2 forms or other earning statements like a 1099, as long as they were not included on elsewhere, like on a Schedule C. So sometimes you have to read these blocks. And oh, I forgot to say, if there is a drop-down arrow, open it. That's where all your information, that's where all your instructions are. And again, remember it's 2024, not 25. Even if you're not doing this until January, it's still 2024 taxes. This one, people make this mistake all the time. They have to, the CSS wants your combined income. And so if you've been contributing to a 401k, 403b or such, that's tax deferred. So that's not showing up on your AGI, but it's showing up on your W-2. So you want to make sure that the figure that you're including is your qualified contribution, and it's not the double D or double A that has the amount of what your employer pays for your health insurance, because that's quite a chunk for most people. And you're not going to include your SEP or simple contributions because that's going to show up somewhere else. And the same thing, if you have an HSA, sometimes it's going to show up on the Schedule 1. So you want to make sure you're not double dipping, but you're not double reporting. Other untaxed income, sometimes untaxed disability. If you had short-term disability, that's taxed, but sometimes you've got long-term disability that you pay the premiums for, your employer doesn't contribute, and that is untaxed disability. So you need to check maybe with your HR person if you're unsure. And do not include money from student financial aid and income reported elsewhere, such as child support received. Now, that's another tip. On the CSS profile, they're still counting child support as income. On the FAFSA, child support is an asset. So just be aware of that. And alimony. It no longer shows up if it's recent, a divorce, since I think 2018 or 19, alimony doesn't show up on the tax return anymore. But whether it's on the tax return or not, they want to know in 2024, how much did you receive? And if they're going to ask, well, what did you receive, earn, or expect to earn in 2025? We still have a couple of months left before the end of the year. You don't have to be exact, but look at your earnings statement and take it from there. And they have all of the what should and shouldn't I include. Include retirement contributions, untaxed distributions, untaxed Social Security, child support received. Again, it's income on the CSS, it's asset on the FAFSA. Do not include gifts and support from other than money received from friends or relatives, veterans' educational benefits, combat pay. So you are going to include what your contribution was of your deferred contribution, which could be your 401k, your HSA, FSA, or child support in this situation. What are the sources of this untaxed income? And you're just going to state what it is. Do you expect a significant change? Now, this does not mean I'm worried about my job because I work for the federal government, or I'm worried because AI is going to take my job one day. That's not a significant expected change. If you know for a fact that you're leaving your employer, they're closing down in February, you can indicate that, but not that you're worried about job loss or change in benefits and such if it's not a given. If you say yes, then this box is going to come up and say, okay, well, what do you expect if there's going to be a significant change. And this form has become intuitive. So if you answer no, then that box, the next box isn't going to show up. So don't look at somebody else is saying something and you think, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. You might not have needed to. So again, just take your time. Um, Federal means tested benefits. If you received any, check the box, except for free and reduced price lunch. If your kid's school system is still on free COVID lunches, never went back to charging for lunch, and your income does not qualify you for the government federal lunch, free lunch and breakfast programs, do not check that box on the CSS or the FAFSA, because you will open up a big red flag can of worms and delay your financial aid applications. Okay, I saw this on this page the other day. Um, and people say, I thought that they were going to ask me about my retirement plans, and everybody gives the wrong answer. Yes, they do. It gets missed. So it's going to be individual. So if it's you and your spouse, what is Luann's employment status? Employed by others or self-employed, or retired or not employed by choice? And let me just say, if you decide that you're going to retire because you no longer want to work and you can retire in the federal system, in the teaching system, whatever, that's your choice. So that's not a special circumstance because you chose to retire at 55 and you still have two kids that you have to, send through college. A lot of people are very surprised about that. That's your choice to, stop working at that time. So, but they're going to ask, well, what kind of retirement plan does Luanne participate in? And you just check all of them. Am I going to draw on Social Security someday? Yes. Unless you're in, like an old civil service plan and you never contributed to Social Security. So just check what's appropriate to you. And then it's going to ask the current value of your tax deferred and after tax retirement, pension, annuities. Now, an annuity, going back to the question at the beginning, as far as about life insurance, cash value and such, if it's a non-qualified annuity, it has to be, it does get assessed. And as an investment. But as far as retirement goes, if you have an IRA that you rolled over into an annuity, that's going to get counted here in your retirement balances. They're not going to assess your retirement, but they want to get a good financial snapshot of your financial health, to see how much are we going to offer to get them to say yes? How close are you to retirement? How robust is your retirement account? So, you're going to just go ahead and add up just your accounts. And notice, oh yes, on this slide, it does say Roth. But your spouse is going to be on another screen. So just keep your retirement accounts separate. And housing. Some people say, well, I don't own my home. I have a mortgage on it. And I said, well, you still own it, even though, you're tied to the bank. So you either, own, rent, or live with others, or maybe your housing is provided by your employer. But let's just say that you inherited your home from when your parent passed away. You're going to enter the market value of at the time of possession, because you technically you didn't purchase the home, but you can't leave it blank because now it is, it's an asset of yours. And some schools that use the CSS profile will assess the equity in your home. Some at 100%, some at 1.5 times your income, crazy kind of calculations, and some they don't assess it at all. So you can call your schools and ask them. Some will tell you, and some will be quite vague. What's the market value? Everybody, what do I put? Do I just go to Zillow? Zillow is always overpriced. Um, you want to just look at, if I had to sell my house tomorrow in a fire sale, what could I get for it? Look at the value of the homes in your neighborhood and area and see, okay, how much work do I have to do on my house if I was to sell it tomorrow? So don't overprice it. This is not the time to be house proud. And you're not going to include any of the debt other than, what's the principal mortgage balance that is left. If you've got a second mortgage on it, fine, or a active equity line. But again, you're not going to, you know, HOA and property taxes and all the things. You're not going to include the value of that. So when they ask for the monthly housing payment, they just want principal and interest, none of the escrow. And the same if you have a rent payment, none of the insurance premiums or anything like that. And again, child support received in 2024. And this is for all children. So unlike on the FAFSA, you only include the amount that you received for that student. Now, they will ask you and break down how much of that child support was for the student that that is applying to college. Now, medical and dental expenses not covered by your insurance. This is not copays. This is, if you had, unfortunately, if you had a lot of medical expenses that ended up, on a Schedule A, line 1 on your tax return, you had a lot of medical expenses because that's usually like 7% of your AGI. But for the CSS, if it's more than 3%, and you can document them, then go ahead and add that. So just be aware, it's, they're not just asking, oh, well, I had $1,000 out of pocket. That's, if that's more than 3% of your income, hopefully not. But I have seen where colleges have asked for verification with a breakdown of the expenses for medical. So be aware. And did the parent have repayment of any college loan debt? Not that you have other loans out for another student or, and this is loan debt that you're repaying for yourself, or if you're already in repayment for another child, that's okay. But it's not just having loans while the student is in college and they're not in repayment yet. So now the next section is going to be the parent assets. And again, it's the current value of the assets, not what they were in 2024. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years. I have never once had anybody that had to upload bank statements or to prove, what they have. They can pretty much tell through your tax return how much you've got in assets because of the interest and dividend lines and such. but you should go ahead and just maybe take a screenshot or print out the statement to show, okay, these are the figures that I'm using on the day that I'm filing, and keep that in a folder, either on your desktop or, on your desk. And because you might have to reference back to it, especially for FAFSA, because once you input your information on FAFSA and you hit submit, you don't see any of those figures ever again. And if you have to go back and make a correction and you have to then put the asset information again, if you don't have your figures already, you're going to be stuck. So again, what investments are included? 529s are a parent investment or asset. Stocks, stock options, bonds, saving bonds, get the, what the valuation of them are. Trust funds, commodities, precious and strategic metals. In 20 years, I haven't come across anybody that has had some. So I'm sure I will one day. But do not include your primary residence. If you have a family-owned business or farm, and your retirement plans, because they're going to be in other areas. Okay. So over, the next questions, do you own real estate other than your primary home? Do you own a business or operate a farm or another source of income? If you say yes to any of these questions, then it's going to open up the screen and require the documents and the data from those investments, the business, your business tax return, and so forth. And if you've got 3 or 4 different entities, you're going to have a lot of data to input. So more on the parent assets, let's just say that you have assets with your younger children. You're on their savings account. You don't count that as a parent asset. But if you opened up a uniform trust for minors account or a uniform gift to minors account, then yes, you're going to count that as your investment for the younger children. Your student that's applying, if they have a UTMA or a UGMA, then that is their investment and asset. Years ago, I had a family that unfortunately listened to their accountant and had, all of their college savings in a UTMA, and the student lost out on being able to go to Emory for the same cost that it would have been for going to Virginia Tech. So it was a expensive, hard lesson for them to learn. What investments are included? That include the parents, again, the 529s, the prepaid tuition, and so forth. Non-retirement annuities, trust funds, do not include the home, the business, or the retirement. Okay. Did the student file a tax return in 2024? And you're scratching your head, did they work in 24? I don't know if they did. If they got a W-2, you want to dig that out because it's going to show up in the IRS system. And oftentimes, if you can't find it, you can contact their employer for, another copy. You're going to need it because the schools want it uploaded. But, last year, what was it? I wrote it down somewhere. It was like $14,600 that a student could earn before having to file for taxes. Now, should they have filed? Yeah, because they would have gotten money back, but they didn't have to. So, but if they did file a tax return, or, didn't, just indicate. But if they didn't file, but they still earned income, you want to put that figure there. Now, how much taxable earnings from financial aid did they receive? This is for returning students, because especially if you are receiving institutional aid from your school that you selected, you're going to do this every single year. If you expect to, continue to receive institutional aid. And if your student received aid more than the tuition, then oftentimes there is going to be taxable consequences. But it's still not going to be anywhere near what it would be if you had to pay that money out of pocket. And then if they had any untaxed portion of any Social Security benefits that did not, and again, they're talking like the student is filling this out, do not include benefits received by your parent for you. Sometimes you have to read these 2 or 3 times to make it make sense. How much does the student expect to receive from the following sources? So provide the best estimate of what the student's parents completing this application plan to pay without loans. So what we discussed earlier was the non-custodial parent. Now we're talking about the custodial parents. And again, not the amount that you would have to take out in loans in order to go to that school, but just, what was your plan on paying, out of pocket, and indicate what that is. If you're expecting your student to receive scholarships, they're not in your possession yet, do not put any of that information here. You may have to do it the next year, but you're not going to do it for this year. And then, they're going to ask how much is in the student's checking and savings. Do they have any investments? Do they have a trust? Do not include the 529 under the student's account. And, current value of all retirement accounts. Yes, this is for the student. And yes, I know a lot of kids have a Roth IRA. Does this say Roth on it? No. So it really, makes you scratch your head and think, well, I guess I don't put my Roth here. It says include tax deferred and after tax retirement. So this is where, if your child does have a Roth, you should put that. Okay, almost done. So special circumstances. What does this mean? If you, in 2024, things were going great. In 2025, you got laid off, or you had, medical expenses, or hurricane, devastated your town, or, whatever those circumstances were that really caused financial damage. This is where you can show that, because it's not going to show on your tax return. And also elder care, financial support. If you are suddenly taking care of an older parent, grandparent, and you are financially supporting them more than 50% of what they earn, you can indicate that here, because that does get pretty expensive. Now, it's a 2,000 character limit, not 2,000 word limit, character. And this is not the place to vent and get super emotional. You want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. This is not the place to complain about your ex, or, whatever. Or to say, oh, but my son or daughter worked so hard, they deserve to go to this school, and da 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 da. This is not the place for that. Just state, I got laid off in February of 2025, it is now October of 2025, and I still have not been able to find employment. You will This is not the special circumstances that you hear about all the time to try to appeal for more aid. That is after the fact, after your students have gotten accepted, and you're, trying to appeal to the financial aid department. But this is a good place to kind of initiate some of that so that they can go back and say, okay, yes, this was also mentioned in the CSS special circumstances. So after that, you think, oh gosh, we're done. And so there's 16 sections. As long as they're all green, yeah, you're done. But if you went ahead and hit submit, it's going to come up with this gray box, and you're going to see, oh my gosh, I've got a couple of white sections. I haven't completed these. You have to go back and complete them, then go back. And once they're all in green, then you get this blue box. Are you ready to review and submit? So you're going to click on that review my application, and you might get a screen that says like this, data checks. When I did this on purpose. I put a squirrely social security number, so this would come up. So it came up. And so I would have to go to click on the hyperlink students identification. It'll take me back to that page to correct it. The most common one is when if you're somebody that is not contributing to your retirement through your employer, through your W-2, and you had zeros for retirement, it's going to come up. I think you forgot to put your information about your retirement. Just click on the hyperlink, you go back to that page. Make sure you've got zeros. You don't have to feel bad because there's nothing there. There's no judgment. It just triggers it because a lot of people forget these things or miss them. But once you go back to the page and then come back to review again, these warnings go away and you won't see them again. So now you'll come up with, okay, we're going to review. This begin review, you would hope that it would be a one PDF, and it's not. It's going to go in sections. But do the review, just have a second time to look at it. But let's just say we just finished and we're not ready to submit yet, because you have to go back and find some information, but you just want to kind of see what else is there. So you can click on skip the review. It'll come up, the disclosure, click on I've read and click on it. And you'll find out that if your AGI was under 100,000, you got an automatic fee waiver. And you don't have to pay any fees to submit the CSS profile. But if your AGI is over 100,000, you'll see this screen first, and it will have the application fee and then $16 fee per college. Now, even with the fee waiver, you're still going to see the same page, but down at the bottom, it's going to say there's no need for you to pay for this because you have a waiver. And now, if you've got 16 or 20 schools on this list because your kid is applying to musical theater or, trying to get into all the Ivies or whatever, and you think, I don't really think they're going to finish applying to all of these schools because, some of these kids by December, they're burnt out. They are exhausted. They don't want to do another essay. And so they might have 3 or 4 schools that they're just going to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. If you think you have some of those on there, just remove them from the list. Don't pay that fee. You can always go back and add it just log back into the College Board, add the school, pay the fee, or maybe you've got a waiver, and, add it at that time. So, there's no need. College is expensive enough. You don't have to pay unnecessary fees. You think you're done, but you're not. And then you have to start thinking and watching for the colleges. What do they want now? They want your documents. They want a copy of your tax return, your W-2s, the 1099s. God only knows what else that they want. They'll all indicate. Now, some of them are going to use the IDOC system through the College Board. So after you've submitted, your student can go to the IDOC. The URL is at the top of the slide, or you can just Google, IDOC login. That's what I did to get that URL. But that's where you'll use the College Board financial aid ID and date of birth or their social, and log in. And then you'll find the schools that are using the College Board. What are they requiring? And then you'll go through all of the directions on how to upload and what you need to send and all those good things. This is imperative. You didn't pay all those fees to not to miss this more important step, because they're not going to process. The college is not going to look at your CSS profile until they have everything. Now, what if they don't use the IDOC? Well, then your student has to really pay attention to the student portals information that they receive, and they should log in and register for their student portal for the colleges. And then they're going to find out in those portals what the colleges are asking for. So this is the list of forms that Syracuse required last year, in addition to the tax return and the W-2s and whatnot. So you are nowhere near done when you hit that submit. So you've got to be aware, because you didn't want to go through that painful financial colonoscopy of the CSS to miss all of this and miss out on any aid that you might have gotten offered. And so, Debbie, it's 9:33. So
Okay.
this is a
Um,
record.
okay, well now let's get into questions. And some of this you did explain, but maybe it didn't sink in for people. So I'm going to start a little bit from the beginning. If you could just quickly explain again how somebody starts the application. Do they log in? Does their student need to log in first? If you can go through that process again quickly.
So the College Board, it's your student's College Board account. So you're going to log in with their login, their username and password. If you are the non-custodial parent, College Board is going to send you an invitation, a link to go to the College Board and create your non-custodial parent College Board account. And then you're going to start inputting, you're going to have your students' name, their social, their date of birth. You're not going to input the colleges because they already have that information. Then you're just going to put your financial information for the non-custodial parent. But the custodial parent is using the student's account. If you don't want your student to see your financials, yes, you can create another College Board account, but even the College Board advises you not to do it because too much can go wrong. So I don't
So
advise
you
doing
just
it.
have to kind of live with that. If you guess you've got a curious student, in theory, they could see what you submitted, but it's safer just from a processing standpoint
Correct. Yep.
to use their account.
There's too much that can go wrong and
Okay.
delayed.
Another area a lot of questions, and it's about divorced parents, and just to let the families with of divorce know, sometimes, Luann and I can look at our calendar. Sometimes we actually do a separate session just for families of divorce, because we know there are a lot of these questions. So we'll try and hit some of them, but some of these are about, like their situation. This one, a parent, we're divorced, but we live together. So how should they be listing themselves?
Then you're listing yourselves as married.
So,
If you're living in the same household, you're filing married as married, on the FAFSA and on the
I
CSS.
was just going to say it's the same situation that you'd have to declare the same for FAFSA too, and that's in that case.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Um, but there was another divorce. Okay. If parents are divorced, but they haven't been in contact, for over 10 years, particularly the non-custodial parent, what should that parent do?
So there are waiver applications that colleges have, and if you can try to get a non-custodial parent waiver. You don't know where they are. You don't have a email for them. You don't have a phone number. You truly have not had any contact with them. Or maybe it's a situation where it's not safe for your child or you to have contact with your ex. So there are situations where the college can waive it, for that need to have that non-custodial application. But just because you guys don't get along and they're paying child support and they see your child maybe once every 2 or 3 months, they're in contact. So they're not going to waive it at that point. Whether your ex, whether it's the ex spouse, wife or husband, I've seen it on both sides. Doesn't matter if they will not cooperate. I had one school one time that this dad would not cooperate at all. And the college just said, well, I'm sorry, we're not the school for you. They wouldn't budge.
Mm. So a different variation of, not being married. These parents said that they were never married, but they still have the same permanent address. I guess they lived together, but they were never married.
So if they're the biological parents, if you remember going back to the, couple of the first screens, whether you're, living together and unmarried, if you're the biological parents, you're going to file. Maybe you file your taxes married separately. It asks, are you filing your taxes married filing jointly, married filing separately, single household, head of household? So, you're still both going to report your information.
Another kind of custodial question. What if these parents truly have a 50-50, custodial agreement?
Then you just figure out which one of you is, earns more. And so the next person is going to say, well, we don't discuss our finances. You can kind of figure which one. And remember, it's going to also, if they've remarried, it's going to use that new step parents information as well. So, somebody has to be the custodial and somebody has to be the non-custodial.
Okay, so now we're going to move away from the divorce and custodial questions and go to business questions. Here is for small business owners, an LLC, do we have to report the working capital of the business, and can they deduct the debt? We have more debt than working capital, but we're worried that the CSS profile will see our working capital as our money when it really isn't.
You're going to follow the directions on the form for the business. They're not going to assess your business assets. But you're going to input that information there. And I understand the worry about it, but they're just be truthful. And that's all you can do. They're just trying to get a good financial picture. I used to, when I first started doing this, and this form was horribly worse than what it is now, but I hated it because I thought it was just so intrusive. But as I learned more, it's actually to your better interest, because the school is just trying to get, okay, how badly do we want this student? How much of a carrot are we going to offer? And they see, your financial position, and it can go in two different ways. One, they can see that, hey, this is a family that can afford to keep their kid here for the 4 years. We want students to stay. So how much, and they've got the algorithms to figure out how much it's going to take for you to say yes.
Um, so somebody's asking, why should they complete fields that aren't required?
Because it's being asked. And if you have a figure on that line item of the tax return, just because it doesn't say required, doesn't mean that you're not going to input that information. If it's on your they're going to get your tax return. So then they're going to see, hey, they're not cooperating. They're trying to hide something. You're going to end up uploading your tax return to the school. So you might as well fill it out properly. That's my take on it.
Somebody's asking a question about like if they're filling out the CSS profile and they have questions and they have support. Does the College Board, do they have like a 800,
Support line.
yeah, support line?
Yeah. They're not going to give you financial advice, but if you have a question as far as what information should I put when it's asking, I don't know, XYZ, sure. But just like on the FAFSA, you want to call more than once, because a lot of times you're not going to get the same answer. They're not financial professionals. They're customer service. Oh, XYZ is supposed to be on that line. They may not even understand the question that you're asking. So just be very careful.
So, okay, this next question is just to kind of a little bit reiterate timing. This parent is asking, so I submit the CSS profile before I find out about my student's early decision. Uh, um, and this is also, I can get a financial aid package at the same time as the decision.
Yeah, pretty much. They're not going to, if you don't
It may
submit.
not come exactly the same time, but go ahead, Luann.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of a delay. They're going to give you a timeline as far as when you should expect an answer for early decision acceptance. And they pretty much do get your financial award to you fairly quickly, because you have to make a decision. And if you're going to accept, then you have to withdraw all your other applications.
And just so that people also understand, for early action, the schools are also requiring your financial forms on the earlier side, and your student will get a answer from the college whether or not they're accepted or not, kind of when the college says it will respond back. But the early action schools don't necessarily, they might take longer to actually give you your financial.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, package, because they know that you don't have to make that same decision, or you're not making that same commitment as an early decision.
So a lot of schools, when they give you that early action acceptance, they might let you know what the merit award would be, because most schools, if you get your application in by early action, if there's automatic merit or such, that's typically when they'll award that. It might take a couple of days after, or maybe a week after, but usually that's when you find out, are they going to get some offer of merit? But you're not going to find out the full financial package until probably March
Yeah.
or April.
Here's a good question. Somebody is asking, like, similar to the Common App, even though majority of questions on the Common App are the same, sometimes individual colleges do have separate questions. Is that the case for the CSS profile? Like, will some college actually ask something
Oh,
slightly?
thank you, whoever
Yeah.
asked that, because
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
I was shocked with the schools that I put in there that there weren't any questions. And I've done several since then, and I haven't had any schools ask any additional questions yet. So, but yeah, I mean, a couple of schools are going to have their own questions. It will be after you've done the special circumstances and you go to hit submit, and before you get to the paste screen, you'll have those schools, each one will ask. And I've had a couple of schools ask, do you how many cars do you have? And they never give you enough um space to put the make and model, even though it's asking for make and model. It's kind of odd. Just answer to the best of your ability.
Question here about if an employer contributes to the retirement fund, do they have to report that number as well as what the contribution that's coming from the employer?
Yes, you don't distinguish between the two. And it was on the drop down as well. It states that.
I can't remember honestly, Luann, if you talked about this, or you might have, but can you repeat quickly about disability and how does that fit into the CSS profile?
If you remember, there was when it's asking for untaxed income, and it stated untaxed disability. So there's going to be where you'll be, if you are receiving disability income, you will report it. Um, Whether it's Social Security disability, or maybe you've got a private disability policy, or your employer disability. It's going to depend. If it's taxable, it's already showed up on your tax return. But what it was asking for is the untaxed disability. So that is uh, oftentimes Social Security disability. If that's your only income, you may not be paying any tax on that. So you wouldn't necessarily have, maybe you didn't even have the need to file a tax return.
Here's a question from a public school teacher who gets a pension through the state, and they're wondering if that counts as an employee-sponsored plan or a state-sponsored plan.
I mean, if it's coming through the state, and if it said a state-sponsored plan, I'd just check state. It's not, it could be either or. It's not going to make that big of a difference, just as long as you have the what the balance is.
So somebody here is saying, I've been doing a lot of net price calculators on, the college websites, and they say they don't count our retirement accounts.
They don't. You're not assessed on your
Right.
retirement.
They just like to know it because it basically gives them a picture of how financially stronger or stable you are relative to another family.
Correct.
Okay, let's see. For retirement accounts, do you note yours and your spouse's separately, or do you just give them combined figures?
There's going to be a separate screen for each parent.
Somebody is saying that they have a 529 that is not owned by them and it's not owned by a parent. It's actually owned by a friend, but it's for the student.
Then it doesn't get reported.
Oh, correct. So it's only the 529s that are owned by the parent.
Parent. Yep.
Does somebody report rent payments?
Yes. Rent that they pay or rent that they receive?
It's unclear. I was just
Yeah.
gonna, yeah,
So if
yeah.
you are receiving rent, it should be showing up on your tax return. So it's going to be one of those line items that's going to show up for you to answer, if you have it registered as a business.
If you're paying rent, it doesn't show up anywhere because,
No, but there was a question, what do you pay for rent?
right,
And
right, right.
or what do you pay for your mortgage? And it's just the principal and interest.
So related to real estate, there's a question here for people who own co-ops, maybe in different cities, what about the maintenance amount? How does that get counted?
It doesn't.
Yikes.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it's
that's
just,
a tough one.
yeah, it's just the principal amount of what you owe. In the drop down box, it states they don't care about all the rest of it. Now, maybe that's an exorbitant amount. You can indicate that in the special circumstances area.
This family, the husband has a pension but will not know the value until he can collect it. He does not get a monthly statement of the value and not sure how much he will receive because that can depend on when he chooses to collect it. How do they report that?
Just contact your HR benefits person and they'll be able to give you a figure. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to be, an average amount.
So somebody's asking, do the FAFSA and the CSS profile numbers have to match?
No, it doesn't have to match, especially if you're not doing it at the same time. If you've got, say an example, you've got a chunk of money in your account because you just sold your house and it's going to be used for a down payment and you filed the FAFSA. And then you filed the CSS 6 weeks later and you've already put a down payment on another property. And now all of a sudden that money is not in your account. Yeah, they're going to ask, why is there such a discrepancy? And it's easy enough to show, to explain, well, we just, it was for a down payment and we were able to find a property.
So going back to divorce situation, somebody is asking, where will it ask me if I want a non-custodial waiver?
It's not going to ask you,
Right, that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, you have to go to the College Board site and go to just again in the search bar. You can go to the CSS profile and go through, there's resources, tabs and such. And there's a whole page that is explaining about the waiver and such.
Right, so you're gonna have to seek it out. It's not going to be
Correct.
like, it's not gonna be a question that pops up.
Correct.
Okay, I think we're gonna make this our last question. And somebody is asking, after learning all about this lovely form tonight, is this something that the parents have to fill out every year?
If you're receiving institutional aid from your college, probably 90% of the time, yes. So some schools will say, no, all we need is your FAFSA going forward. And some will say, yes, we want the FAFSA and the CSS profile.
So,
And a
yeah,
couple of them say, well, unless you've had some major change, you don't have to.
so it's gonna be school dependent, and you'll just see whatever school your student ends up deciding to attend, what their policy is.
Correct.
Okay, well, Luann, thank you so much for all your time and expertise. Lots of questions we got through. There are definitely other questions that we didn't, but I think there was a lot of valuable information from just your walkthrough. And if you feel like you want to do, we call it a CSS profile review with Luann. And Luann, you can explain, but you've kind of done it either way, where people fill it out in advance and you review it, or if they really are having trouble filling it out, you basically come to the session with all of their information and you guys fill it out together during that time.
Um, that's a different conversation if they have
Okay.
not filled it out, because it takes several hours to do that. I mean,
So it's really the first. They fill it
the
out in advance and um, and they send you a lot of their documents that they use to fill out and you review it.
no, so what we do is, you're gonna input your data, you go through, Debbie's link, and you pay what their fee is, get on my calendar, knowing that you have got to input all of your data, have your tax return and all your statements and everything, all your documents handy, because usually we end up having to we get on a Zoom and you'll log in and we just start going through screen by screen like what we were doing. And as long as you have all your documents nearby, then we can make corrections easily. But you've got to input, of course, there's going to be maybe a couple of things I just wasn't sure what to do. Um, and that's what the review is for. But to do the whole thing, that takes hours. And so to just, send me a message and we can figure it out.
And somebody asked Luann, how far out are you scheduling now? And kind of, I'll ask the opposite question, kind of like, knowing a deadline, a school's deadline, how far in advance, if they want to get a review from you, do they need to purchase and schedule it?
You need to make sure you're giving yourself 3 days for the College Board to process your application to the colleges.
Well,
So
that's
look at
right.
what
That's
your,
3 days. Go ahead, continue.
just look at what your deadline is, and plan accordingly.
I know, but but asking specifically if they want you to do a review. So they need to obviously factor in 3 days for it to process, but how quickly can you turn around a review, when somebody purchases?
We go through the application right then and there. It takes about 90 minutes. So you're 99% of the time, unless you have to go get another document or change something, you're submitting while we're on Zoom. So it's just a matter of getting on my calendar. And I've opened up my hours, but I'm getting booked. So I do not work 24 hours a day, so.
Okay, well, thank you again. And I know it's a busy time of year for you and your student, but as we kind of started out this session, please make sure you know what your deadlines are and save yourself enough time, whether you're going to do it on your own, whether you want extra help, and factor in that it takes a few days for the College Board to process before it even gets to the college itself. Okay,
Correct.
thank you, Luanne. See everybody soon.
All righty. Well, good luck, everyone, with all of your data input and with your children and their selections.
Yeah. Take care. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Debbie.